Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I have a topic that I'm very excited to talk about because we are going to go over what I think is easily one of the most contentious discussions that this community has fought over ever since the Division 2 was released. All because of the introduction of raids, both their existence, their setups, as well as their replacement of incursions from the Division 1, and just in general a widespread disagreement with how endgame content should be handled in the Division franchise. As a quote-unquote hardcore Division player, this is something I'm personally super interested in and invested in, and so while I know this topic comes with a lot of baggage and preconceived notions, I come to you today with a presentation for how I would personally handle the issue of raids and incursions in the Division 3. A plan in which, if I may be so bold, I think everyone wins. You please the hardcore audience, you please the casual audience, you please the person who plays the game for 5 minutes and never gets back on because they'll never encounter this shit anyways. I digress, I don't know why I said that. I'm excited to get into this, and you all, of course, will be judging if this pitch of mine sounds smart or not, so let's just get right into it. I figure it may be best to start with my background on this topic specifically, just so you all can get an idea of where I'm coming from with this. I love both incursions and raids from the Division 1 and 2 respectively. I think they both present awesome endgame challenges with cool set design and enemy encounters. That said, raids are absolutely my favorite of the two. In fact, and I've said this before, raids are easily my favorite thing about the Division 2 period. I think Dark Hours and Iron Horse present gorgeous and unique locations. Their boss design is to perfection in the sense that as hard as it is to create a raid encounter in a more realistic setting like the Division, the teams nail it with both of these raids. I believe Ubisoft Annecy were the ones who did them, and bravo, because they're simply great. I've never had any issues with socializing or using third-party matchmaking tools to find groups for raids, so I've always just run them with a few friends and other strangers, or just 7 total strangers and, people I don't know, and I always have a good time. So as much as I love incursions in the Division 1, raids offered me everything I liked there turned to 11. So there you have it. That's where I'm coming from. That said, I understand people's sentiments for why they don't enjoy raids in the Division 2 and why they enjoyed incursions a lot more. Raids have a higher barrier of entry, both in difficulty and in group gathering. They also present exclusive exotics, which I think is crucial for a raid experience, but don't worry, we'll get to that issue later on. But that's something that a lot of people don't like. So there's a fair argument to be made on either side. But how does Massive navigate that if and when they go to designing the Division 3's endgame? Do you once again choose between having raids or incursions and risk aggravating the other half of the fan base? It's a difficult position, no doubt, but I think I have a pretty fair solution. Here's the pitch. You do both. Now, I want to preface this. This pitch is going to be kind of extremely detailed and specific, and that's really just because I'm so passionate about the subject, but I apologize in advance if this is really more detailed than you need, but I hope you'll stick with me. One of the principles I would love for Massive to adopt in the Division 3, as far as this pinnacle endgame content goes, is the significance to the events. What do I mean by that? Well, Destiny is a great example. What they'll often do is have their raid launches be a community-wide event, both externally, like the world's first race, but then the raid also holds significance in the game. For instance, one time they had it so that it was a new map for either like Crucible or Gambit released once the first team had beaten the raid. And then they also had it once so that once the world's first had cleared, there was a cutscene for every player who logged in after that point, whether you partook in the raid or not, and that was because the events in the raid and its, conquering had led to a big change in the associated open world area that everyone used. So Bungie has had a great track record of putting some serious weight and significance on their raids, and I would love to see more of that in the Division in such a manner like I'm about to describe. All right. Here's the pitch. Every time a new raid is developed and going to be released, it comes alongside a new incursion. Now, you might think, well, that's like double the work, and that's not very feasible. It would certainly be some degree of increased work, absolutely, but not as much as you may think, because I would house both of the activities in the same location. I'm going to use Iron Horse and the United Foundry, or whatever it's called here, as an example, obviously from the most recent raid in the Division 2, just for example's sake. New raid coming up, Operation Iron Horse. It releases, there's huge buzz for the world's first race. There you have it. But then 1 week later, the associated incursion releases, but this time it takes place in the same location, but notably after the events of the raid. So for example, in Iron Horse, you're fighting a big train. I'm sure most of us know that by now. The raid takes place you're doing your thing, and it ends with the climactic battle against Morozova and the Iron Horse, resulting in the train's wreckage being left there. Well, once the Iron Horse incursion unlocks, or whatever you'd call it, there's a narrative reason for returning to the location. Enemies have returned. There's something that the raid team missed. I don't know. But as you move through the areas, it's clear that this has happened after the events of the raid, notably with the Iron Horse train wreckage being present in the final area and stuff like that as you progress through the entire zone. I feel like that'd be pretty cool. So the basic idea is the 8-man raids, with all of their, cool scope and scale and boss fights, mechanics, etc., get to stick around. Awesome. But at the same time, there's still opportunity for a 4-player incursion activity to take place in the same location so that there's less work for the devs and less FOMO for the players who can't raid. And it's more accessible with matchmaking, less complex mechanics, etc. I feel like that's a pretty solid compromise and solution to this tricky issue we've had of juggling these two activities in sides of the player base, but it doesn't end there. Rewards are also a hugely controversial issue. How do you keep the raids meaningful as big endgame challenges with lucrative rewards without entirely blocking out the audience who's only going to play the incursions? Well, my solution is to let them both have opportunities at the same loot, but just skew it towards the bigger challenge. By that I mean, let's say that this raid incursion pair has the Eagle Bear as its exclusive exotic reward. Well, I'd keep a similar system to how the exotic acquisition works in Division 2's raids. You have a minor chance from each boss and then like a 10% chance from the final box. However, if you choose to participate in the incursion, which again is basically a 4-player version of the same activity taking place in the same location but after the events of the raid, you have a 5% chance of the exotic, or 4% or 3%. Don't make it impossible to obtain, but the raid activities should absolutely offer the easier path of acquisition for taking on that greater challenge. So maybe it takes you, 3 times as long to obtain the exotic if you only plan to play the incursions, but that's just kind of the price you got to pay. I feel like this would be an overall pretty fair system, not locking out the rewards from the incursion crowd, but still respecting the prestige and challenge that comes alongside raiding. And just for that extra tier specialty, I'd probably give each raid an exclusive cosmetic set you can earn just so there's a little bit of exclusivity, just one that doesn't involve gameplay affecting rewards. So there you have it, folks. That is basically my pitch for how Massive should handle endgame content in the Division 3. To briefly recap, I would introduce both raids and incursions, structuring raids, difficulty, and rewards quite similarly to the Division 2, but then having an incursion activity open a week later in the same environment as the raid did, but chronologically after the world's first team has gone there and done their thing. And then for this easier 4-player activity with less intricate mechanics, still offer the exclusive exotic reward that the raid does, just at a much lower drop chance, so that you have to stay dedicated in order to obtain it. Or it might just encourage you to step out of your comfort zone a little bit and then try the raid out. I honestly think a lot of Division players would thoroughly enjoy the raids if they ever gave them a fair shot. I understand that it's just too crazy of an experience for some people to handle. They just want a more relaxed gaming session, and I totally get that. But I feel like there's so many people who just feel defeated by the non-matchmaking barrier of entry, and I promise you all that it's not that hard to find groups. If you're on Xbox, just use the built-in LFG system. That's literally how I find all of my raid groups, and I pretty much always have a good time. As I said, raids remain my favorite part of the Division 2, and I would love for as many of you as possible to experience them. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you can be updated every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts on my ideas and detailed pitch of how Massive should handle the raids, incursions, and endgame content overall in the Division 3. Do you agree that a compromise like this could work, where you have raids and incursions both present with shared rewards across the board? Does the idea of adding some story significance to the raids and having that be present in the incursions sound like a cool idea? Whatever you're thinking, be sure to let me know down below. I'll be curious to read through all of your thoughts and ideas. Whenever I cover topics as large and contentious as these ones, I'm always slightly nervous that I'll put off some people just by suggesting something they don't like, but you all are usually super receptive to discussion and conversation, so I appreciate that. After all, none of this is ever going to happen anyway. It's just fun ideas, and that's why we're here, and I love being able to talk about all of it with you guys. So yeah, everybody, that is going to do it for me today. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold